the St. Louis now.
Oh no! Son of a bitch.
You get your two?
Yeah.
Ah, Matthew, what a national treasure. Anyway, welcome back to the channel, everyone. Thotgor here, of course, and today we are going to take a look at the Dunkirk. This replay, though, is brought to you by the subscribers, you guys, because this Dunkirk was gifted to me. Actually, I did receive 2 Dunkirks, which was fantastic, because then I get the Dunkirk and the gold, so thank you guys so much. You guys know who you are. Obviously, I'm forever indebted to you, and if there's anything that I can do to help you guys out, obviously, just let me know. I am at your disposal. The Dunkirk. So we're going to finally take a look at the old Dunkirk here. I had every intention of getting this video out yesterday. I actually had it all put together, ready to go, and there were some technical difficulties I don't quite understand. It got frustrated, and it was like 10:30 at night, and I just wanted to play some ships, so I just said, fuck it, I'm doing it tomorrow. So here it is. Anyway. The Dunkirk. The ship that everyone seems to underestimate, I suppose. I don't personally have that many issues with the Dunkirk at all. I actually think she's a really great battleship at tier 6. If you recall from the previous video where I did a little blurb about the Dunkirk, and I had mentioned that if you play the Dunkirk like a normal battleship, if you play her like you would maybe any other battleship at tier 6, keep in mind the battleships we have at tier 6 in the game currently, you know, the max speed on them is 25 knots, they've got relatively good armor, they do have limited, well, not limited firepower, but limited frontal firepower, we'll say, when you're bow on. So keep in mind, I mean, you got to play them differently, right? One of the main differences, obviously, I mean, also the most main obvious difference here is that the turrets on the Dunkirk are located on the forward section. 2 on the forward section, we can see them up there. On the rear of the ship is where the majority of your secondary armament is concentrated, concentrated in little turrets there, which is interesting as well. So the firepower and the dispersion. The dispersion seems to be a huge issue for a lot of people. The range on the Dunkirk is about 19 kilometers, which is a really good range. There's nothing wrong with that. You have the option as well of adding a scout plane to the Dunkirk to increase that range even further. I would recommend against the scout plane because, yes, the dispersion is a little wonky. It is a tier 6 battleship after all, right? I don't think I've ever been in a tier 6 battleship where, well, except the Bayern actually, where, you know, you fire your shots and they go where you expect them to land. The Bayern is a different sort of beast in that regard. But anyway, Dunkirk. So, you know, I wouldn't recommend getting that scout plane because it's only just going to increase your dispersion even further. And at those, you know, that higher increased range, what can you really expect to hit? It doesn't make any sense to me. So I use the fighter plane on her. The dispersion, yeah, I mean, we did just see there, I pretty much straddled that Congo out there. But if you do get in close, and mid-range, not close. The Dunkirk can get into mid-range, right? And because, again, the firepower is concentrated on the bow of the ship, you can basically just, aim right at the enemy ship and start firing down at the enemy. And it works out pretty well in most cases. Now, the side armor, broadside, presenting broadsides to your enemies in the Dunkirk, not a good idea. The Dunkirk doesn't really have that much armor, and it's for a number of reasons. We need to go back to the Washington Naval Treaty, when that was signed back in the 20s. Provisions were made to allow France and Italy to, I believe, build 2 more battleships in replacing 2 of their pre-Dreadnought battleships. So there was provisions for those 2 nations to build 2 new battleships. So designs, went out, and the French started fielding different designs here. Originally, the main sort of hull of the ship generally stayed the same in between the various designs that were submitted. There was one design actually that came out on top and was the preferred design. It was basically the Dunkirk as we see her now, but she had a turret on the rear as well. This would have been a 3rd quadruple turret on the rear. Now, in order to accommodate that extra weight, obviously the ship itself would have had to be bigger, she would have been heavier, and then she no longer would have conformed to the tonnage requirements set out in the Washington Naval Treaty. And by this time, I believe there was a second revision to that Naval Treaty as well, where it was decided again, to basically limit the number of battleships that each nation could have. So because of this, the French did eventually end up on the design here that we have, the Dunkirk. Now, they could have spread the guns out more, because we have 8 guns, right? So that could be 2 cannons in 4 turrets, spread out along the length of the ship like we would see in a more traditional layout. However, the French really did want these quadruple turrets, and having the firepower on the front of the vessel made sense for the French Navy and its demands at the time. Keep in mind, the British and the French were, allied, or essentially allied, before World War II began, right? And they had, long-standing long-standing agreements and what's the other word I'm trying to use? Understandings, military stuff. They had long-standing, collaboration going on between them. And what that meant was that in the event of war, the Royal Navy would essentially, attempt to do the blockade of the North Sea, again, because, obviously they considered Germany a big threat, so that's what they were planning for. And what the French Navy was designed to do was to essentially keep the trade routes in the Mediterranean flowing. France and Britain both had colonies overseas, for example, Indonesia, I think, I don't know, it was near the Dutch East Indies at the time, and then French Indochina as well. So, they had a lot of raw materials in those zones, specifically rubber, which was incredibly important, and they needed to get that rubber back to the mainland. So they needed to have the Suez Canal and Gibraltar and the Mediterranean as a whole guarded, and they needed those convoys to flow through. Now, the one navy that would oppose that obviously would be the Italian Navy, so the French Navy was designed to counter the Italian Navy. The Italian Navy, as we know, or should know, was comprised of a number of really good ships, actually. The Italian ship designers were bang on. Their ships, however, were lightly armored, but very fast. So the idea here was that the Dunkirk may be, she was actually quite fast and one of the fastest ships in her time, but she could still be outrun by some Italian vessels. So with the speed she has and with the gun placement she has here, she could essentially chase the Italian vessels in this chase position with the Italian vessel in front of you, be able to fire all of her guns at the vessel. Was essentially the idea behind her. Now, as we know historically, the Dunkirk never actually got to do any of that because Vichy France was created. But anyway, back to the ship herself. So you can see I have been doing quite well so far. This, as a matter of fact, as well, is the first battle I played in the Dunkirk. So I, essentially got the gift, loaded up the game, and jumped into this battle. And that also equates to why I do not have the premium repair party on here, because I forgot to do it. Same thing with the damn donkey. I keep forgetting to do that. But anyway. What else do we have here on the Dunkirk that makes her different from a normal battleship, I suppose? One thing that you probably do see a number of Dunkirk captains doing is, keeping their bow on target and maybe slowly moving towards you, or maybe going in a slow reverse. This is not a bad strategy. It can definitely work, considering as well that, you're a tier 6 battleship and you have the potential to see higher ships. I know in this match here, I got lucky, tier 6 maximum. But if, say, for example, the tables were turned and I have a Nagato in front of me, your strategy of driving straight at the Nagato isn't necessarily going to work. The Nagato can pretty much penetrate the Dunkirk here from basically any angle. So you do want to be aware of this. Now, for me as a cruiser captain, this, it comes fairly natural for me. All of my cruisers can be citadeled basically from any range, any angle, by any ship, except destroyers, right? So, I'm fairly used to this, and I'm fairly used to the idea of maneuvering around. So this is where the Dunkirk speed maneuverability really come into play, for me anyway, and make the ship really enjoyable. I really do move around a lot on the battlefield. I'm not just going to point my ship in one direction and go in that one direction. I'm always trying to, fire and move. And I know that, I'm constantly on the move, but just be in a different position. Now, we have an interesting situation coming up here as well with the Warspite, the Tier 6 British battleship. Now, this Warspite, as we know, the Warspite is a really great battleship. She hits very, very hard, and she is well armored. So one-on-one Dunkirk versus Warspite, I don't know who's going to win, but if I were to bet, I would say that it's going to be the Warspite. I mean, obviously, at the end of the day, it will come down to the captains and all that crap, but I think the Warspite is going to come out on top. What saves me here is the fact that the Warspite isn't actually firing on me. I have allies around to take some of those shots that the Warspite is more focused on. And this is also something really important with the Dunkirk. If the Dunkirk is all by herself, she is going to fail miserably. You can't charge off by yourself in the Dunkirk. You need to have your team there and supporting. You need to support them, they need to support you. Now, this is, a pretty common theme with a lot of ships in the game. But there are those ships, obviously, that are more well suited to leading the charge. The Dunkirk is not one of those. She needs to be in a group, and ideally, she's not being focused down, because she is really susceptible to fire. So if, a few cruisers and destroyers decide that they're just going to fire HE at the Dunkirk, you are going to find that you are going to burn out pretty quick. Other positive attributes that I really enjoy about the Dunkirk as well, turret traverse. She has a pretty great turret traverse. If you're in a hard over turn, the turrets aren't going to be quick enough to keep up with you in that turn. However, they're only slightly off the angle that you're pointing at, the spot that your reticle is pointed at. So they will quickly come into position. The reload time, I think it's about 25-26 seconds. That is very, very manageable, especially for a battleship. That's not too bad at all. We can see right in front of me, right? I'm fighting it out with this Dunkirk in front of me now. Exactly why you do not want to fire a broadside, give a broadside to other enemy battleships. It doesn't work out very well. So, I mean, keeping some of these things in mind, you can actually get the Dunkirk to work, or at least I can get the Dunkirk to work for me fairly well. What I most value in a ship is speed and maneuverability. Now, this is obvious as being a cruiser captain, right? So if you give me any ship that has speed maneuverability, I can pretty much make it work. Give me some time, but I can make it work. In fact, I'm actually liking the Dunkirk and finding the Dunkirk easier to play than, say, my donkey right now, because that donkey has less armor than this thing. It's ridiculous. But anyway, really enjoying the Dunkirk. She is not a bad battleship. I mean, at the end of the day, right, she is premium, and I didn't buy it, so it was gifted to me. So yeah, if it were my own money, I probably still would have purchased her, but only after doing a little more research on it. But I still would have purchased her because, you know, there are people in the clan who I've been talking to about the Dunkirk before it was actually showed up in my port here. And they have a lot of positive things to say about the Dunkirk. And I mean, these are people that, you know, I trust their opinion about ships. So if they're telling me that it's a decent ship and then I've got all these other, you know, people saying that they're bad, I really want to know why there is that discrepancy. So it just intrigues me and makes me want to purchase a ship and get it. Again, thank you so much for giving me the ship. But anyway, secondary batteries on the Dunkirk. Like we talked about, they are concentrated on the rear of the ship. And it's interesting. It makes for interesting times, I guess. What I essentially tend to do when I'm in a Dunkirk, and now obviously, you know, I've played more battles since this one here, and I think this battle too might be an exception in terms of damage done. So I did do a bit of damage. The other battles, usually I'm hovering around 75, 80,000 damage. But anyway, secondaries. Now they are interesting. They're on the back of the ship, but you do still have some secondaries along the port and starboard side. Not many. The majority is concentrated on the back in 3 quadruple turrets. Normally, what I've been doing is the secondaries, obviously on a battleship, most ideally are, you know, for destroyer defense, right? You want to get the destroyers away from you. So when I see a destroyer in the Dunkirk, and it's near enough that my secondaries are opening up, generally what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to steer away from the destroyer so that the stern of the ship is facing the destroyer, and those are my secondary guns. Whether or not this is a proper thing to do, I don't 100% know, because it does have mixed results, right? It's better to dodge torpedoes if you turn in to the destroyer, because then you bow onto the destroyer and it makes it easier to dodge. So I'm still working on that one, but that's sort of what I found. Now we can see I'm moving in close here for the enemy Dunkirk, and also you'll notice I did fire a high explosive salvo there at the Dunkirk as well. The high explosive damage here on the Dunkirk is pretty damn great. The armor piercing is going to give you more damage overall, obviously, but you know, if you're in a situation where high explosive is could be an option, you might be able to take it, especially, you know, further ranges out with the dispersion. So you can see as we move closer into the enemy Dunkirk that you do see my secondary batteries start to open up. People have asked how effective are the secondary batteries on the Dunkirk. I would say that they are fairly effective. What makes them effective? No, I don't think it makes them effective. But what I find interesting about the secondary batteries on the Dunkirk is that they are, the majority of them are actually located in quadruple turrets as well, which is really interesting, and it makes for some the potential for a lot of hits there very quickly. So battle is over. We have won. We can see the overall results here, not too shabby at all. And the overall impression that I have of the Dunkirk is she's a great ship. I don't know why there was so much hate around her, other than speculating that people who provided the reviews on her are either, you know, too much of a traditional battleship captain, or just didn't play the Dunkirk enough to uncover and unlock, you know, her little secret hidden gems there that make her unique and really, really something else in battle. Really enjoy her. Like I say, she has great range. Even though the turret placement, all the guns are on the front, it's really not that big of a deal. You do also have the option of being able to fire all 8 cannons forward of the bow, right? So she has really, really good firepower front on. The armor is decent, but you do want to limit your broadsides. That's very important and usually very obvious in a lot of ships. Secondary batteries are there, but the angles are funky, so you do have to work that into your sort of thoughts when you're going close in on anyone. But overall, yeah, like the ship, and I mean, expect to see more Dunkirk replays as well. She's great. I don't have too many issues with her at all. Keep in mind, though, I'm not a traditional battleship captain. Cruiser captain here, and this, you know, she's really more of a battle cruiser than a battleship, given the amount of armor that she has, and that sort of plays more into my style. Anyway, wanted to get this video out today, obviously, to get the Dunkirk, to thank those two individuals again. You guys know who you are, who have sent me the Dunkirk. Thank you again so much. You guys rock, as do all of my subscribers. So, leave any comments you have for me in the video comment section below. Love reading those and responding back to them. Hit the old like button if you did like today's video. Hit subscribe if you are not a subscriber. And as always, I do hope you enjoy the rest of your day.